The rain wasn't gentle that afternoon. It came down hard, slapping the cracked sidewalks of the south side like it had a grudge. Puddles formed fast in the potholes, and the wind tugged at loose trash bags and flapping laundry. Most kids Maya's age were already inside, probably eating warm dinners or watching cartoons safe from the cold and wet. But Maya wasn't most kids. At 12 years old, she'd learned that safety wasn't something you could count on. It was something you had to fight for every single day. She stood under the awning of Mr. Chen's bike shop, shivering in a thin hoodie that had seen better days. Her fingers were numb, not just from the cold but from the weight of what she was about to do. Parked beside her, chained to a rusted bike rack, was her red bicycle, the one with the chipped paint and the wobbly front wheel. It wasn't fancy. It didn't have gears or a basket or even working brakes, but it was hers. More than that, it was the last real thing her dad had given her before the accident. She remembered the day clearly. He'd come home from his night shift at the warehouse, tired but smiling, holding the bike with both hands like it was made of glass. "For my big girl," he'd said, ruffling her hair. She'd been 8 then, and it felt like the whole world had opened up. She could ride to the park, to the library, even all the way to her best friend's house 3 blocks away. For the first time, she wasn't just stuck waiting, she could go. Now, 4 years later, that same bike was her only ticket to food. Inside the shop, Mr. Chen wiped down a handlebar with a rag, glancing out the window every few seconds. He knew why she was there. She'd been circling the block for 2 days, slowing down each time she passed his store, staring at the "We Buy Bikes" sign taped crookedly to the glass. He hadn't said anything. He didn't need to. People didn't come to sell bikes unless they had no other choice. Maya took a deep breath, wiped her nose with the back of her sleeve, and pushed the door open. A bell jingled overhead, too cheerful for the mood. "Hey, kid," Mr. Chen said, not looking up. "You finally decide?" She nodded, though he couldn't see it. Her throat felt tight. "Yeah." He set down the rag and walked outside. Raindrops dotted his bald head as he crouched to inspect the bike. He gave the tire a squeeze, flat. He spun the wheel, wobbled like it was dizzy. He tested the brakes, nothing. Then he stood, hands on his hips, and sighed. "This thing's seen better days," he said gently. "I know," Maya whispered. "But it still works, mostly." Mr. Chen studied her face, the dark circles under her eyes, the way her jeans were rolled at the cuffs because they were too long, the way she kept glancing toward the street like she expected someone to stop her. He'd seen that look before. Hunger had a face, and he knew it well. "All right," he said. "I'll give you $40. Her heart sank. She'd hoped for more, maybe 50, maybe even 60 if she begged. But $40. That was 2 bags of rice, a can of beans, maybe some powdered milk, and a small bottle of cough syrup. It wouldn't last long, but it would last longer than nothing. "Okay," she said, voice barely above a whisper. He went inside and came back with a worn envelope, counted out 4 tens, handed them to her like it was normal, like kids didn't sell their only treasures for grocery money every day. She took the cash, folded it carefully, and tucked it deep into her pocket. Then she unchained the bike with trembling fingers. The metal links clinked like a sad goodbye. "You need a ride home?" Mr. Chen asked. She shook her head. "I'll walk." He nodded like he understood. "Take care of yourself, all right?" She didn't answer. She just turned and started walking, her sneakers squelching in the wet pavement. Behind her, the bike disappeared into the shop. She didn't look back. If she did, she might cry, and she couldn't afford to cry right now. Not when there was still so much to do. The walk home took 20 minutes, longer without the bike. Her legs ached, and her stomach growled so loudly it echoed in her ears. She passed a fast food place where the smell of fries made her dizzy. She looked away. She passed a grocery store with bright lights and full shelves. She kept her eyes on the ground. She passed a family getting into their car, laughing, the kids buckling into booster seats like it was nothing. She swallowed hard. When she finally reached the building, a 3-story brick walk-up with peeling paint and a flickering porch light, she paused at the bottom of the stairs. The apartment they'd lived in for 6 years was gone. Evicted 2 weeks ago after the rent went unpaid for the 3rd month. Now they stayed in the basement of Mrs. Ruiz's house, a kind woman from church who'd offered them a corner of her laundry room. It wasn't much, just a mattress on the floor, a folding table, and a hot plate, but it was dry. And it was quiet. She pushed open the creaky door and stepped inside. The smell of mildew and old detergent filled her nose. In the dim light, her mom sat on the edge of the mattress, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the wall. Her hair was messy, her face pale. She hadn't left the house in days. "Hey, Mama," Maya said softly. Her mom turned slowly, her eyes red-rimmed but trying to smile. "You're back. Did you find anything?" Maya didn't say, "I sold the bike." She just pulled the money from her pocket and held it out. "Got $40. Thought we could get rice and beans. Maybe some medicine, too." Her mom's face crumpled. She reached for Maya, pulling her into a hug that felt too thin, too fragile. "Oh, baby. No, you didn't have to do that." "I wanted to," Maya lied. "It's just a bike." But they both knew it wasn't just a bike. It was freedom. It was memory. It was the last piece of her dad she could hold on to. Her mom pulled back, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry. I should be taking care of you, not the other way around." "You are taking care of me," Maya said firmly. "You're here. That's enough." But it wasn't enough. Not really. Her mom used to work at a call center for a big tech company. Long hours, low pay, but steady. She'd come home exhausted but proud, always making sure Maya had homework done and dinner on the table. Then she got sick. A bad cough that wouldn't go away. She missed 3 days of work. They said it was unexcused absence. She got a warning. Then another. Then last month, a letter. Position eliminated due to restructuring. No warning. No severance. No chance to explain. Since then, her mom had sent out dozens of applications. No calls back. The little savings they had vanished fast. First the rent, then the electricity, then the phone. Now they were down to nothing. Maya set the money on the table and started pulling on her raincoat again. "Where are you going?" her mom asked, voice weak. "To the store. Before it closes, I'll come with you." "No," Maya said quickly. "You need to rest. I'll be back soon." She didn't wait for an argument. She slipped out the door and walked the 6 blocks to the discount grocery store. She moved fast, like if she hurried, the shame wouldn't catch up to her. Inside, she grabbed the cheapest rice, store brand, 20 pounds for $10. Canned black beans, 3 for $2. A small jar of peanut butter. A loaf of day-old bread. And at the pharmacy counter, a bottle of generic cough syrup. The total came to $38.73. She handed over the 40, got $1.27 in change and stuffed it into her pocket like it was gold. Walking back, the rain had stopped, but the air was still damp and cold. She hugged the grocery bags to her chest, trying to keep them dry. Her arms ached, but she didn't care. She had food, real food, not just crackers and water like the last few days. When she got back to the basement, her mom was lying down, eyes closed. Maya set the bags quietly on the table and started boiling water on the hot plate. She measured out rice, added salt, stirred slowly. The smell began to fill the small space, warm, comforting, almost normal. Her mom opened her eyes. "Smells good." "It will be," Maya said. She poured a spoonful of cough syrup into a plastic cup and brought it over. Her mom sat up, took it with a shaky hand and drank it down. "Thank you," she whispered. Maya just nodded. She didn't say, "You're welcome." She didn't say anything at all. Because deep down she was angry. Not at her mom, never at her mom, but at the world. At the company that fired her without even asking why. At the system that let people fall through the cracks like it was nobody's fault. At the fact that a 12-year-old had to sell her bike just to buy beans. But she kept that anger locked tight inside. Because showing it wouldn't help. Crying wouldn't help. What helped was rice on the stove, medicine in her mom's system, and a plan for tomorrow. Later that night, after they'd eaten small bowls of rice and beans, Maya lay on the thin mattress beside her mom. The room was dark except for a sliver of streetlight through the high window. Outside, a dog barked. Somewhere, a car drove by. Her mom reached over and took her hand. "I promise things will get better." Maya squeezed back. I know, she didn't believe it, not really. But she wanted to, and sometimes wanting was enough to keep going. She closed her eyes, listening to her mom's breathing slow into sleep, and for the first time in weeks, her own stomach didn't hurt from hunger. It hurt from missing her bike, from missing her dad, from missing the life they used to have. But she was still here. And as long as she was here, she'd keep fighting. For her mom. For herself. For whatever came next. Outside, the city hummed on, unaware of the quiet courage in that basement room. Unaware that somewhere, a billionaire CEO was about to walk into a story he never saw coming. One that began with a girl, a sold bicycle, and a pot of rice simmering away. And a hot plate. The next week passed slowly, like time itself had gotten tired. The cough syrup helped a little. Her mom could sit up without wheezing now, but the money was gone again. Maya had stretched the rice and beans as far as she could, adding water to make more soup, crumbling bread into it for bulk. But by Tuesday, the pantry was empty except for a half-used packet of salt and a single tea bag. She knew what she had to do. Early that morning, before the sun fully rose, she slipped out of the basement with a worn grocery sack and a pair of thick gloves with holes in the fingertips. She walked to the industrial part of town where big apartment buildings dumped their recycling bins on the curb every Monday night. Aluminum cans were worth 5 cents each at the scrapyard, sometimes more if they were clean and dry. It wasn't much, but it was something. She worked fast, moving from bin to bin, her eyes scanning for silver glints in the gray morning light. She found a few soda cans, a couple of energy drink containers, even an old soup can someone had tossed by mistake. She crushed each one with her foot, the sharp crunch echoing in the quiet street, and dropped them into her sack. Her fingers grew stiff from the cold, and her back ached from bending over, but she didn't stop. Every can was a step closer to a loaf of bread, maybe even a banana if she was lucky. By 9 o'clock, her sack was heavy. She hoisted it onto her shoulder and started walking the mile to the scrapyard. Halfway there, she passed a row of tall office buildings with glass fronts and doormen in uniforms. People in suits hurried past her, talking into phones or sipping coffee from paper cups. No one looked at her. No one ever did. She kept her head down, focused on the sidewalk ahead. But then, thud. She bumped into someone. Hard. The impact sent her stumbling backward, and the sack of cans slipped from her shoulder, spilling onto the wet pavement with a clatter. Cans rolled in every direction, some clinking into storm drains, others skidding under parked cars. "Oh no. Sorry. I'm so sorry," she gasped, dropping to her knees to gather them. Her face burned with embarrassment. She didn't look up. She just scrambled to collect the cans, her gloves soaking up dirty water from the street. "It's all right," a man's voice said. Calm, deep, not angry. She peeked up just enough to see polished black shoes, dark trousers, a long coat. Definitely not someone who belonged in her world. She expected him to step around her and keep walking like everyone else, but he didn't. Instead, he crouched down and started picking up cans too. "No, it's okay, I got it," she mumbled, reaching for a can near his hand. He handed it to her anyway. "You work hard for these, don't you?" She shrugged, not sure how to answer. "Just trying to help out." He stood and offered his hand. She hesitated, then took it. His grip was firm but gentle, and his palm was warm. He helped her to her feet, then looked at her properly for the first time. His eyes were sharp but not cold. There was something behind them. Curiosity, maybe even concern. "You look hungry," he said quietly. Her stomach chose that moment to growl loudly. She crossed her arms over it, cheeks flaming. "I'm fine," he didn't argue. Instead, he glanced at the cafe across the street, steam fogging the windows, the smell of fresh bread drifting out. "Come on," he said. "Let me buy you breakfast." She shook her head fast. "No, really, I can't." "Please," he said, and there was something in his voice that made her pause. Not pity, not condescension, just kindness. Real, simple kindness. She glanced back at the spilled cans, then at the cafe. Her stomach growled again, louder this time. She hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon. "Okay," she whispered, "but just coffee for me." "I don't need food," he smiled faintly. "We'll see about that." Inside the cafe, it was warm and smelled like cinnamon and roasted coffee beans. Soft music played in the background, and people sat at small tables, reading newspapers or typing on laptops. Maya felt out of place in her damp clothes and scuffed shoes, but the man didn't seem to care. He led her to a corner booth far from the windows like he wanted to give her space. He ordered 2 hot chocolates, a plate of scrambled eggs, toast, and fruit. When the food came, he pushed the plate toward her. "Eat." She stared at it like it might disappear. "I can't take all this." "You can," he said. "And you should." She picked up a piece of toast, her hand trembling slightly. She took a small bite. It was soft, buttery, perfect. She hadn't tasted real butter in months. Tears pricked her eyes, but she blinked them away fast. He watched her eat, sipping his hot chocolate slowly. "How old are you?" he asked after a while. 12. And you live around here? She nodded. With my mom. We're staying with a friend right now. What happened to your home? She hesitated. Most adults asked questions like that to judge, not to understand. But this man, he just listened, so she told him. Not everything. She didn't mention the bike or the eviction, but enough. She told him her mom used to work at a call center for a big tech company, that she got sick, that she missed a few days, that they let her go without warning, that the bills piled up, that they lost the apartment. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer empty platitudes like, everything happens for a reason. He just sat there, his expression growing heavier with every word. What company was it? He asked finally. Nexatech, she said. The customer service line. He went very still. His cup hovered halfway to his lips. Nexatech? Yeah, you heard of it? He set the cup down slowly. I know it, she didn't think much of it. Nexatech was everywhere. Phones, computers, even the smart speakers in people's homes. Of course he'd heard of it. He leaned forward slightly. Your mom? Did she try to explain why she missed work? She sent them doctor's notes, Maya said, bitterness creeping into her voice. But they said it didn't matter. Said they were cutting costs. Restructuring. That's what the letter said. He looked down at his hands. For a long moment, he didn't speak. When he finally looked up, his eyes were different, softer, but also haunted. I'm sorry, he said. And this time it didn't sound like a polite phrase. It sounded like he really meant it. She shrugged again, pushing the last piece of toast around her plate. It's not your fault. But something in the way he looked at her made her wonder. They sat in silence for a few minutes. Outside, the city buzzed, cars honking, people shouting, the distant wail of a siren. Inside, it felt strangely quiet, like the world had paused just for them. Before they left, he pulled a small card from his coat pocket and handed it to her. It was plain white, with just a name and a phone number. No title, no company logo. If you ever need help, he said, call this number anytime, day or night. She took the card, confused. Why would you do that? He gave her a small, sad smile. Because sometimes the right thing isn't the easy thing, and I think I owe your family that much. She didn't understand what he meant, but she tucked the card into her pocket anyway, next to the dollar bills she'd saved from the grocery trip. He walked her back to the corner where she'd dropped the cans. Most were gone, swept away or stolen, but a few remained. He helped her pick them up, then handed her a $20 bill. No, she said quickly. I can't take your money. Then think of it as a loan, he said. Pay me back when you're older. With interest, she almost smiled, almost. Thank you, she said softly. He nodded. Take care of yourself. And your mom. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd like he'd never been there. But Maya stood there for a long time, the card in her pocket feeling heavier than it should. That night, back in the basement, she showed the card to her mom. Who gave you this? Her mom asked, squinting at the name. A man I met downtown. He bought me breakfast. Her mom's eyes widened. This is the CEO of Nexatech. Maya froze. What? She grabbed the card back, staring at the name like it might bite her. That's impossible. Why would the CEO of Nexatech buy me breakfast? I don't know, her mom whispered, her voice shaking. But he's the one who signed off on the layoffs. I saw his name on the company memo. Maya's stomach dropped. All day she'd thought he was just a kind stranger. But he wasn't. He was the man who'd fired her mom. The man whose decision had left them homeless, hungry, desperate enough to sell a bicycle just to eat. She felt sick, betrayed, angry. But then she remembered the way he'd looked when she mentioned Nexatech. The way his voice had changed. The way he'd said, I think I owe your family that much. Maybe he didn't know. Maybe he'd never seen her mom's file. Maybe he thought he was just cutting numbers on a spreadsheet. Not real people with real lives. She didn't know what to believe. She tucked the card under her pillow that night, not sure if it was a lifeline or a reminder of everything they'd lost. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the basement window. Her mom coughed softly in her sleep. Maya lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word the man had said. Sometimes, the right thing isn't the easy thing. She didn't know if he was sorry. She didn't know if he'd help. But for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to hope, just a little, that maybe, just maybe, someone in power had finally seen them, not as statistics, Not as costs to cut, but as people. And that, she thought, was worth holding on to, even if it turned out to be nothing at all. That night, the man couldn't sleep. He sat in his high-rise office, the city lights glittering far below like scattered stars, but his mind wasn't on profits or product launches. It was on a 12-year-old girl with tired eyes and a voice too old for her years. He kept seeing her hands, small, chapped, gripping a soggy grocery sack full of cans. He kept hearing her say, "They let her go without warning." And worst of all, he kept remembering the quiet shame in her voice when she said, "It's not your fault, but it was." He walked over to his desk and opened his laptop. The screen glowed in the dark room as he typed in a command only a handful of people in the company knew. Within seconds, he was inside the Human Resources Archive. Deep files, not the sanitized summaries his assistants usually handed him. He typed a name, Priya Patel, Department Customer Support. Location, Chicago Call Center. The file loaded slowly. He scrolled through attendance logs, performance reviews, all rated excellent. And then there it was. A scanned doctor's note dated 3 months ago. Diagnosis, severe bronchitis, possible pneumonia. Recommended rest, 10 days. Attached email from Priya Patel. Please excuse my absence. I will return as soon as I am able. I've attached medical documentation. Below it, a system-generated response. Absence not covered under current policy. 3 unexcused absences result in automatic termination, per restructuring guidelines. No human had reviewed it. No manager had called to check in. No one had asked if she needed help. The system had simply flagged her, processed her out, and moved on, like deleting a file. He leaned back in his chair, running a hand over his face. He'd approved that restructuring plan himself. He'd sat in a conference room with executives, nodding as they talked about efficiency, streamlining, and reducing overhead. He'd signed the order without reading the fine print, without imagining the faces behind the numbers. And now one of those faces belonged to a girl who sold her bicycle to buy beans. He thought about his own childhood, growing up in a cramped apartment, his mother working double shifts at a diner, coming home with her feet swollen and her voice hoarse. He remembered nights when dinner was just rice and ketchup, days when he wore the same shirt 3 times in a week because it was the only clean one. He'd sworn then that if he ever had power, he'd use it to lift people up, not grind them down. Somewhere along the way, he'd forgotten that promise. He closed the file and stared out the window. The rain had started again, soft this time, tapping against the glass like a quiet reminder. He couldn't undo what had been done, but maybe, just maybe, he could make it right. The next morning, he didn't call a meeting. He didn't send an email. He put on a plain coat, left his driver behind, and took the subway downtown. He hadn't ridden public transit in over a decade, and the noise, the closeness, the smell of wet wool and coffee surprised him. He felt exposed, ordinary, and for the first time in years, that felt like a good thing. He walked the last few blocks to the address scribbled on the back of the business card he'd given the girl, the one she'd shown her mother. It wasn't an apartment building. It was a modest house with peeling white paint and a small garden out front, now muddy from the rain. A sign on the gate read, "St. Bridget's Outreach Temporary Shelter." His stomach tightened. They weren't just struggling. They were living in a church basement. He knocked softly on the side door, the one marked "Residents Only." After a long pause, it opened a few inches, held by a chain. A woman's tired eyes peered through the gap. "Yes?" she asked, voice cautious. "I'm looking for Priya Patel," he said gently, "and her daughter." The woman studied him for a long moment. Then slowly she unhooked the chain and opened the door wider. "They're in the back room. Laundry area, but are you a bill collector?" "No," he said quickly. "I'm a friend." She didn't look convinced, but she stepped aside. Down the hall, last door on the left. He walked down the narrow hallway, the smell of bleach and damp towels growing stronger. At the end, a thin curtain hung across an open doorway. He paused, suddenly unsure. What would he even say? "Sorry I ruined your life. Here's some money to fix it." Before he could decide, a cough came from inside, deep, wet, painful. Then a softer voice. "Mama, you should lie down." "I'm fine," came the reply. Weak but stubborn. "Just need a minute." He took a breath and pushed the curtain aside. The room was small, barely big enough for a mattress, a folding table, and a hot plate. Boxes were stacked in the corners, labeled clothes, books, kitchen. On the mattress, a woman sat propped up with pillows wrapped in a faded quilt. Her skin was pale, her hair thin, but her eyes were sharp. Beside her, the girl stood stirring something in a pot on the hot plate. They both looked up, startled. The girl's eyes widened. "You?" Her mother frowned, confused. "Do you know this man?" The girl nodded slowly. "He's the one from the cafe, the CEO." Her mother's face went white. She tried to sit up straighter, pulling the quilt tighter around her shoulders like armor. "What are you doing here?" He didn't step farther into the room. He stayed near the doorway, hands in his pockets, suddenly feeling like an intruder. "I came to apologize." "For what?" The girl asked, her voice guarded. "For not seeing you," he said. "For not seeing either of you. I approved the layoffs at your call center. I signed the order that ended your job." He looked directly at the mother. "I didn't know your story. I didn't read your file. I trusted a system that didn't care about people like you, and that was wrong." Silence filled the room. The only sound was the soft bubbling of the pot on the hot plate. The mother looked down at her hands. "You didn't know," she said quietly. "But you could have asked." "I should have," he admitted. "And I'm sorry I didn't." The girl crossed her arms. "Sorry doesn't buy food." "No," he said. "It doesn't, but I'd like to fix what I broke if you'll let me." "How?" the mother asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want to give you your job back," he said, "with full back pay and health insurance, and I'll cover your rent until you're back on your feet." The girl snorted. "You think money fixes everything?" "No," he said, "but it's a start, and I know it's not enough, so I'm not just offering a job. I'm offering a choice. If you don't want to come back to Nexitech, I'll help you start something of your own. A small business, a community kitchen. Whatever you want to do, I'll fund it. No strings." The mother stared at him, her eyes searching his face for lies, for tricks. But all she saw was regret and something else, sincerity. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you do this?" He thought for a moment. "Because I used to believe success meant building something big. Now I think it means making sure no one gets left behind while you're building it. And you got left behind. That's on me." The girl looked at her mother. "What do you think, Mama?" Her mother didn't answer right away. She looked around the tiny room, the damp walls, the thin mattress, the single light bulb flickering overhead. Then she looked back at the man in the doorway. "I don't want charity," she said firmly. "I'm not offering charity," he replied. "I'm offering restitution. There's a difference." She studied him a long time. Then slowly she nodded. "All right, but if I do this, I do it my way. No fancy offices. No corporate nonsense. I want to help people like us, people who fall through the cracks." "That's exactly what I hoped you'd say," he said, a small smile touching his lips. He didn't stay long after that. He didn't want to overstay his welcome. Before he left, he handed the girl a new envelope, this one thicker with more than just cash inside. "For groceries," he said. "And maybe a new bike someday." She didn't take it right away. "You really mean it? You're not doing this for cameras or news or anything like that?" "No cameras," he said. "No press. Just you, your mom, and me. That's it." She took the envelope then, her fingers brushing his. "Okay." He turned to go, but paused at the curtain. "One more thing," he said. "I'll be back next week to talk details, and, if you're willing, I'd like to volunteer here. Wash dishes, sweep floors, whatever needs doing." The girl raised an eyebrow. "You wash dishes?" He smiled faintly. "Everyone starts somewhere." Then he left, closing the curtain softly behind him. Back outside, the rain had stopped. The sun was trying to break through the clouds, casting long shadows on the wet sidewalk. He walked slowly, not toward his car, not toward his office, but just walked. For the first time in years, he felt lighter, not because he'd fixed everything, he hadn't, but because he'd finally looked someone in the eye and said, "This is my fault," and they hadn't turned away. That evening, in the basement room, the mother and daughter sat at their folding table, the envelope between them. "You really think we can trust him?" the girl asked. Her mother sighed. "I don't know. But today, when he looked at me, he didn't see a layoff. He saw a person. That matters." The girl opened the envelope. Inside was $200 in cash and a note for tonight's dinner. "Tomorrow we build something better." She folded the note carefully and tucked it into her pocket. Next to the old business card, outside the neighborhood hummed with life, kids laughing, a radio playing salsa music, the distant rumble of a bus. Inside, for the first time in months, there was something besides worry in the air. Hope, quiet, fragile, but real. And sometimes, that's enough to start over. The offer sat between them like a live wire, charged, uncertain, full of possibility but also risk. The mother didn't say yes right away. She didn't say no either. For 3 days she thought about it while stirring thin soup on the hot plate, while folding donated clothes, while listening to her daughter hum softly as she did homework by flashlight during a power outage. She weighed pride against survival, dignity against desperation. She'd worked hard her whole life, not for handouts, but for the quiet satisfaction of providing for her child with her own 2 hands. Taking money from the man who'd signed her termination letter felt like swallowing glass. But then she remembered the look in his eyes. Not pity, not guilt dressed up as generosity, but something quieter. Responsibility. He hadn't shown up with cameras or promises for the news. He'd come alone in plain clothes and offered to wash dishes. That meant something. On the 4th morning, she called the number on the card. He answered on the 2nd ring. "Hello? It's Priya," she said, voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. "I've decided." There was a pause. Not impatient, just respectful. "And? I won't take my old job back," she said. "But I'll take you up on the other offer." "The kitchen." Relief softened his voice. "Good, that's good. I want it to be real," she added quickly. "Not some fancy charity with your name on a plaque. Just a place where people can get a hot meal without feeling like they're begging." "Understood," he said. "You run it. I just fund it. No interference." They met the next day at a small diner, not the fancy cafe downtown, but a neighborhood spot with sticky tables and strong coffee. He came alone again, carrying a simple notebook. She brought her daughter, who sat quietly watching everything with sharp eyes. They talked for hours. Not about budgets or permits at first, but about people who needed help. Families with kids, seniors on fixed incomes, workers between jobs, people who fell through the cracks of a system that moved too fast to notice them. The mother described how she'd once seen a man eat ketchup packets from a gas station because he couldn't afford lunch, how a neighbor had reused tea bags for a week just to feel like she was having something warm. "I don't want this place to feel like a handout," she said. "I want it to feel like coming home," he nodded. "Then we'll make it that way." Over the next few weeks, things moved faster than either of them expected. He found a small storefront on a quiet block, formerly a laundromat, then a failing bakery, now empty and affordable. He paid the deposit, covered the first 6 months of rent, and hired a contractor to fix the plumbing and install a commercial stove. But he didn't show up with blueprints or demands. He asked her what she needed. "A big stove? Yes. A walk-in fridge? Absolutely. A place for kids to sit while their parents ate? That's essential," she said. Meanwhile, the daughter started school again. Not the overcrowded public school she'd left when they lost their apartment, but a private one with small classes and after-school programs. The man had arranged it quietly, working with the headmistress to frame it as a community scholarship, not a favor. On her first day, the girl wore a clean uniform, carried a new backpack, and walked with her head high. She didn't tell anyone where she'd been or what she'd been through. She just showed up ready to learn. But not everyone was happy. Rumors started online. A local news blog ran a short piece. Billionaire funds pet project for laid-off worker, PR stunt or genuine change. Comments poured in. He's just cleaning his conscience. Why her and not the other 199 people he fired? Rich people playing hero while the rest of us starve. The daughter saw the article on a classmate's phone and felt her stomach twist. She didn't say anything, but that night she asked her mother, "What if people think we're just part of his show?" Her mother put down her sewing. She was mending tablecloths for the kitchen and looked her in the eye. "Then we prove them wrong. We make this place so real, so full of heart that no one can call it a stunt." And they did. The mother threw herself into the work. She visited food banks, talked to farmers markets about surplus produce, reached out to local churches and community centers. She didn't wait for perfection. On the kitchen's soft opening, a rainy Tuesday in late fall, she served simple meals. Lentil soup, cornbread, applesauce. Only 10 people came, But they left full and some even smiled. The man showed up that day just like he'd promised. He wore an apron over his shirt, rolled up his sleeves, and spent the afternoon washing dishes in the back. No one recognized him. To the guests, he was just another volunteer, quiet, efficient, never drawing attention to himself. But the daughter watched him. She saw how he listened when an elderly woman talked about her grandson, how he carefully refilled a child's cup without being asked, how he stayed late to mop the floor after everyone else left. "He's not pretending," she told her mother later. "No," her mother agreed. "He's learning." Still, the doubt lingered. One afternoon, a reporter from a bigger news outlet showed up, camera in hand, asking for an interview. The mother politely refused. "This isn't about us," she said. "It's about the meals," the reporter pressed. "But your story is powerful. A fired worker given a second chance by the CEO who let her go. It's compelling." "It's not a story," the mother said firmly. "It's our life, and we're not selling it." The reporter left, frustrated, but the daughter felt proud. Her mother wasn't letting anyone turn their pain into entertainment. As the weeks passed, the kitchen grew. More volunteers signed up. Retired teachers, college students, even a former Nexatech employee who'd also been laid off. They called it the table, simple and warm like an invitation. People came not just for food, but for conversation, for connection. Someone started a small library shelf in the corner. Another brought board games for kids. On weekends, a local musician played soft guitar in the corner. The daughter began coming after school, helping set tables or pack leftovers for neighbors who couldn't make it in person. She even started a homework corner where younger kids could do schoolwork while their parents ate. She didn't do it for praise. She did it because she remembered what it felt like to be invisible, and she never wanted anyone else to feel that way. One evening, as they cleaned up after dinner service, the man stayed late again. The mother was wiping down counters, the daughter was stacking chairs. "You've built something special here," he said quietly. "We all did," the mother replied. "You just gave us the space." He shook his head. "No, you gave it the soul." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the only sound the hum of the refrigerator and the distant city traffic. Then the daughter spoke up. You could have just given us money and walked away." He looked at her. Would that have fixed anything? She thought about it. Maybe for a little while, but not really. "Exactly," he said. "Real change isn't a check. It's showing up. Every day." The next week, something unexpected happened. A woman came in, late 30s, tired eyes, holding a toddler on her hip. She stood near the door, hesitant, like she wasn't sure she belonged. The daughter recognized that look. She walked over. "Hi, you can sit anywhere." "Dinner's lentil stew and rice," the woman nodded, voice barely a whisper. "Thank you, we just lost our apartment. My job closed last month." The daughter didn't ask which company. She didn't need to. She just smiled. "You're safe here." Later, as the woman ate, tears streaming down her face, the daughter told her mother what happened. Her mother sighed. "It's happening all over the city. People think layoffs are just numbers, but each one is a family, a story." The man who'd been refilling salt shakers nearby overheard. He didn't say anything. But the next morning, he called an emergency meeting at Nexatech headquarters. He didn't announce it as a policy change. He told the story. Not his own, but the woman's, the one with the toddler. He described her hands shaking as she held her child, the way she kept saying, "I'm sorry for needing help." Then he said, "We did that. Our decisions did that." He announced a new rule. No more automated layoffs. Every termination would require human review. Medical notes would be honored. Employees in crisis would be offered support, not dismissal. And he created a company fund, seeded with his own money to help workers facing emergencies. Rent, medical bills, food. Some executives pushed back. "It's not efficient," one said. "It'll cost millions." He looked at them calmly. So did our silence. The changes rolled out slowly, but they stuck. And word spread, not through press releases, but through people. A janitor at another company heard about it and asked his union to push for similar policies. A small business owner in another state read about the table and started her own version. Back at the kitchen, life settled into a rhythm. Mornings were for prep, chopping vegetables, making broth, baking bread. Afternoons brought volunteers and deliveries. Evenings filled with the clatter of plates, the murmur of voices, the warmth of shared humanity. One rainy Friday, the daughter found the man standing alone in the storage room, staring at a box of donated canned goods. "You okay?" she asked. He turned, surprised. "Yeah, just thinking." "About what?" "How close I came to never knowing you existed," he said softly. "How easy it is to build a world so high up you forget there's ground beneath it." She didn't know what to say to that, so she just handed him a can of tomatoes. "Here, we need these chopped." He took it, smiled faintly, and followed her back to the kitchen. No cameras. No speeches. Just two people side by side doing what needed to be done. And in that quiet act, something real was growing. Not just a kitchen, but a new kind of hope. One that didn't depend on wealth or status, but on showing up, listening, and refusing to look away. The world outside still had its problems. Layoffs still happened. Hunger still knocked on too many doors. But in this small room, on this quiet street, people were learning that change didn't always come from the top down. Sometimes it started with a girl selling a bike, and a man finally seeing her. 6 months later, the rain fell again, but this time it felt different. Not cold or punishing, but gentle, like the city itself was sighing in relief. The street outside the table glistened under the soft glow of new porch lights, and the smell of simmering vegetable stew drifted through the open kitchen door, mixing with the damp earth scent of spring. Inside, the place hummed with life, not the frantic energy of a charity in crisis, but the steady warmth of a home that had found its rhythm. Long wooden tables, donated by a local carpenter, were filled with people. A young couple with a baby in a carrier, two elderly men sharing a joke over cornbread, a group of teenagers helping serve meals while laughing about school. In the corner, a small bookshelf overflowed with paperbacks, and beside it, a chalkboard listed the day's menu in bright, looping handwriting. At the stove, the mother stirred a large pot, her cheeks flushed from the heat, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wore a simple apron now, not the threadbare shawl she'd wrapped around herself that first winter. Her cough was gone. Her steps were sure. And when she smiled, which she did often, it reached her eyes. Near the front, the daughter moved between tables, refilling water glasses and checking if anyone needed seconds. She'd grown a little taller, her shoulders straighter, her voice calm and clear. She no longer flinched when someone made sudden movements or raised their voice. The fear that used to live in her chest, the kind that came from never knowing if there'd be food tomorrow, had quieted. Not vanished, but softened, like a scar that no longer ached. And in the back, washing dishes as promised, was the man. He'd traded his tailored suits for worn jeans and a faded t-shirt, his sleeves rolled up to his elbows. No one treated him like a CEO here. To the regulars, he was just the quiet guy who scrubs pots. And he liked it that way. Today was special. It was the 6-month anniversary of the table, and they were hosting a small gathering, not a party, but a thank you. A chance to honor the volunteers, the neighbors, the people who'd turned a struggling idea into something real. As the lunch crowd thinned, the daughter walked over to the man. "We're about to cut the cake," she said. "You coming?" He dried his hands on a towel. Wouldn't miss it. They gathered in the main room. The mother stood at the front holding a simple sheet cake decorated with fresh strawberries, donated by a local farm. She didn't give a long speech. She just said, "This place exists because people chose to care when it would have been easier not to. Thank you for showing up." Then she cut the first slice and handed it to the man. He took it, but before he could eat, the daughter stepped forward. She held out a folded piece of construction paper, slightly crumpled at the edges. "For you," she said. He opened it carefully. It was a drawing, childlike but full of feeling. A girl on a red bicycle pedaling toward a bright yellow sun. In the background, a tall building with one window lit up. Below it, in careful letters, "From then to now." He stared at it for a long time. His throat tightened. He didn't cry. Men like him rarely did in public, but his eyes grew shiny and he blinked fast. "Thank you," he said, voice rough. She shrugged, but her smile gave her away. "I thought you should have it." Later, after the cake was gone and the last guest had left, he stayed behind to help clean. As he wiped down tables, he kept glancing at the drawing, now resting on the counter. "You know," the mother said, joining him, "I never thought I'd see this place full of people. I thought we'd be lucky to feed 10 a day. And now it's over 100, he said. You've hired 3 part-time staff. You've got partnerships with 5 farms. You're teaching cooking classes next month. She laughed softly. I still can't believe it's real. It's real because you made it real, he said. Not me. You. She looked at him, really looked. You could have walked away. Most would have. Maybe, he admitted. But I'd still be the man who fired you without knowing why. I was saying I'm something else. They didn't say more. They didn't need to. Over the next few weeks, changes rippled outward quietly, steadily. At Nexitech, the new HR policies were working. Fewer layoffs, more support. Employees reported feeling seen, not just counted. The company even launched a national pilot program, offering grants to other businesses that wanted to create emergency aid funds for their workers. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Meanwhile, the table became more than a kitchen. It became a hub, a place where job seekers posted resumes on a community board, where a retired nurse offered free blood pressure checks every Tuesday, where kids came after school to do homework and eat a snack. The daughter, inspired by her own experience, started a youth group called Next Step, a safe space for kids from unstable homes to talk, plan, and support each other. They met every Thursday in the back room, and she led the meetings with a calm confidence that surprised even her. One afternoon, as she organized donated school supplies, a new girl walked in, maybe 10 years old, eyes wide, clutching a backpack that was too big for her. She hovered near the door, looking lost. The daughter recognized that look instantly. She walked over, smiling.
Hey, you here for the after-school group?
The girl nodded shyly. My mom said this place helps. It does, the daughter said. Come on, we've got cookies. She led the girl to the table, introduced her to the others, and sat with her until she stopped looking at the floor. Later, as they colored together, the new girl whispered, My dad lost his job last month. We're staying in my aunt's garage. The daughter didn't offer empty comfort. She just said, You're not alone anymore. And she meant it. Back at his office, now less a fortress and more a workspace, the man kept the drawing pinned to the wall beside his desk. Not in a frame, not behind glass, just taped there, slightly crooked, so he'd see it every time he looked up from his screen. Visitors sometimes asked about it. He never gave a full explanation. He just said, It reminds me what matters. He still made tough decisions. He still ran a company. But now, before signing anything that affected people's lives, he asked one question. Who does this hurt? And have we looked them in the eye? One evening, he returned to the table not to volunteer, but to sit. Just sit. He took a seat at the back, ordered a bowl of stew, and watched. He saw the mother laugh with a regular customer. He saw the daughter help an elderly man carry his leftovers to the bus stop. He saw a young man, newly employed thanks to a job lead posted on their board, come in to drop off a bag of groceries for the kitchen. No one made a fuss over him. No one even seemed to notice he was the billionaire behind it all. And that, he realized, was the greatest gift of all. Later, as he walked home through the quiet streets, he passed a bike shop. In the window, a red bicycle, shiny, new, with a small bell on the handlebars, caught his eye. He didn't go in, not yet. But he made a mental note. The next Saturday, he returned. He bought the bike. Then he walked it the 10 blocks to the house with the church basement. He knocked on the side door. The daughter answered. He didn't say anything. He just held out the bike. Her eyes widened. For me? For you, he said. No strings. No reason, just because you deserve to ride again. She ran her hand over the handlebars, then looked up at him. Thank you. This time she didn't hesitate. She hugged him, quick, tight, real. He hugged her back just as briefly. Then he turned to leave. Wait, she called. Will you come to the anniversary next year? He smiled. Try and stop me. As he walked away, he heard the sound of the bike bell. Ding, ding. Light and joyful, ringing out into the spring air. Back inside, the mother watched her daughter pedal slowly around the driveway, testing the brakes, adjusting the seat. The sun broke through the clouds, casting long golden rays over the neighborhood. They'd been through hunger, shame, fear. They'd sold a bike to survive. But now they had more than food. They had purpose, community, dignity. And sometimes that was enough to build a whole new life. The story didn't end with a mansion or a headline. It ended with a pot of stew on the stove, a bike leaning against the wall, and a drawing taped to a billionaire's office wall, not as a trophy, but as a compass. Because real change wasn't about grand gestures. It was about showing up, listening, making things right, One meal, one conversation, one act of courage at a time. And in that small kitchen on that ordinary street, hope wasn't just a word, it was something you could taste.